There is a quiet, mysterious interval between deep dreaming and full wakefulness where sleep paralysis reveals the intricate chemistry of the human mind. It is a natural phenomenon that tells a fascinating story about the way we rest. As you settle in to enjoy these relaxing facts, perhaps quietly clicking subscribe to stay connected with our calming content, consider that this state is simply your brain waking up a few moments before your body does. It is not a malfunction, but rather a lingering safety feature known as REM atonia. When you enter the deepest stages of sleep, your brain brilliantly engages a chemical lock to keep your major muscles still, ensuring you do not physically act out the vivid narratives of your dreams. This paralysis is a guardian, a protective stillness that keeps you safe in your bed while your mind explores distant worlds. Occasionally, the mind surfaces from the depth of REM sleep into the state of awareness slightly faster than the body can dissolve this chemical lock. You find yourself in a unique twilight zone, fully conscious and able to see, yet physically heavy and still. For those fascinated by the science for sleep, this synchronization gap is a perfect example of the complexity of our biological clocks. It is estimated that roughly 8% of the general population will experience this distinct sensation at least once, making it a surprisingly common event. Among students or those with irregular schedules, that figure is often much higher, suggesting that simple fatigue plays a significant role. This is excellent bedtime listening because understanding the mechanics removes the fear commonly associated with the experience. The body is simply finishing its cycle of deep relaxation. The neurotransmitters GABA and glycine, which act to calm the central nervous system, are still active during this phase, holding the muscles in a state of profound rest. It is a harmless delay, a brief pause where the software of the mind has loaded, but the hardware of the body is still powering up. This temporary stillness is a testament to how deeply the body can relax, maintaining its composure even as the conscious mind begins to observe the morning light. In this unique moment of stillness, the first thing one notices is the sheer, unclouded clarity of the environment. Unlike the hazy, shifting logic of a dream, where the edges of the room might blur or the geography of a house might change, the sensation here is grounded in the absolute reality of the bedroom. You might see the dust motes dancing in a shaft of sunlight, or hear the distant rhythmic hum of a refrigerator or the chirping of birds outside. The mind is fully online, sharp and attentive, yet it is housed within a vessel that has not quite received the memo to engage. It is a feeling of profound weight, a comforting heaviness that blankets the limbs, anchoring them deep into the softness of the mattress. While the major skeletal muscles, the ones responsible for running, reaching, or turning over, remain in their temporary slumber, there are specific parts of the body that often never lose their connection to your will. The eyes, fascinatingly, are usually exempt from this muscular lock. They can look around, scanning the ceiling or the window, serving as the primary bridge between the internal awakening and the external world. Alongside this visual freedom, the rhythm of breath continues unbroken. It is common to perceive a sense of pressure on the chest, a feeling of density, but this is merely a sensory illusion caused by the deep relaxation of the intercostal muscles between the ribs. The diaphragm, that sturdy engine of respiration, continues its work efficiently and automatically, ensuring that breath flows rhythmically even when the conscious mind feels it cannot take a deep, voluntary gasp. This state exists on a delicate borderland, a twilight zone of neurology. It is distinctly different from the chaotic narrative of a dream. In a dream, you accept the impossible, flying, shape-shifting landscapes, or nonsensical conversations without question. Here, your logic is fully intact. You know who you are, where you are, and exactly what is happening. It is a hybrid state of consciousness, a rare intersection where the remnant biology of sleep and the onset of wakefulness overlapped for a fleeting interval. It is a moment of pure observation, stripped of the ability to interact, rendering you a silent spectator in your own life. Within this pause, time itself seems to stretch and dilate. Because the usual feedback loops of action and reaction are suspended, a duration of merely 10 or 20 seconds can feel far more expansive, like a long, slow minute. It is a distortion of perception, where the silence of the room feels deeper and the stillness feels absolute. It is a suspension of agency that allows for a profound, if involuntary, meditation on the present moment. You are simply existing, held in a safe suspension between the night behind you and the day ahead. Eventually, the brain realizes the discrepancy. The signal to move is resent, louder this time, or perhaps a sudden noise snaps the physiological lock. But to understand why this fascinating delay occurs at all, we must look inward, past the sensation, and into the intricate wiring of the nervous system. We have to explore the biological safety mechanism that was designed to protect us, but which simply lingered a moment too long. This lingering effect originates deep within the architecture of our sleep cycle, specifically during the stage known as rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. Scientists and sleep researchers refer to this specific physiological lock as REM atonia. The word atonia is derived from Greek roots meaning a lack of tone or tension, describing the complete and total relaxation of the skeletal muscles. While it might feel frightening when experienced consciously, this state is actually one of the body's most ingenious acts of self-preservation. Consider for a moment the vivid intensity of your dreams. In that internal world, you might be sprinting across a sprawling meadow, swimming through deep, resistance-heavy water, or climbing a steep mountain. Your brain is firing commands to your muscles just as frantically as if you were actually performing these feats in reality. Without a reliable safety switch, your physical body would attempt to act out every jump, every kick, and every turn.
You would be a danger to yourself, risking injury by thrashing against furniture or walls, and a danger to anyone sleeping beside you. To prevent this chaos, evolution devised a brilliant chemical blockade. Located in the brainstem, specifically within a region called the pons, there is a cluster of neurons responsible for managing this delicate transition. As you drift deep into the dream state, these neurons release specific neurotransmitters, chemical messengers like glycine and GABA that travel down the spinal cord. Their job is to actively inhibit the motor neurons that control your voluntary muscles. It is effectively a biological circuit breaker. It shuts down the power grid to your arms, legs, and torso, while strictly leaving the vital autonomic systems like the rhythmic beating of the heart and the rise and fall of the diaphragm perfectly intact. This ensures that while your mind wanders through the limitless, active landscapes of a dream, your body remains safely anchored to the mattress, protected from its own imagined exertions. This creates a fascinating physiological paradox. During REM sleep, the brain is almost as electrically active as it is when you are wide awake, consuming energy and processing complex emotions. Yet the body is in its most profound state of stillness. It is a dual state of existence, a storm of neural activity contained within a vessel of absolute calm. Under normal circumstances, this system works with seamless, unnoticed precision. As the sleep cycle concludes and the brain begins to rouse toward wakefulness, the brainstem flips the switch back on. The chemical blockade lifts, The motor neurons re-engage and sensation floods back into the limbs, usually the very instant you open your eyes. The timing is typically so perfect that we never even notice the mechanism existed in the first place. We simply wake up and stretch, unaware that mere seconds ago we were physically incapable of moving a single finger. Sleep paralysis, then, is merely a harmless timing error in this complex sequence. It is a gentle glitch in the transition, a momentary lag where the mind achieves consciousness before the chemical blockade has fully dissolved. The brain wakes up, realizing it is back in the room, but the command center for the muscles is still on standby, finishing its shift. You are essentially observing your own biological safety protocols from the inside out, aware of the lock, but unable to find the key. It is a rare overlap of two states of being that are meant to be kept separate, a fleeting window where the waking self accidentally stumbles upon the paralyzed machinery of the dreaming self. To understand this machinery, we must look to the invisible rivers of chemistry flowing through the brainstem. This state of suspension is governed by a precise and elegant biological system, a cascade of microscopic messengers that ensure your physical safety while your mind wanders through the impossible landscapes of a dream. The primary architect of this stillness is a neurotransmitter known as GABA, or gamma-aminobutyric acid. While the name may sound clinical and complex, its function is beautifully simple. GABA is the brain's chief inhibitory neurotransmitter, essentially acting as the master switch for relaxation and neural quiet. Working in tandem with GABA is another vital molecule called glycine. Together, these two chemicals perform a synchronized dance that is essential for restorative sleep. During the phase of rapid eye movement, when dreams are most vivid and the brain is highly active, specific clusters of neurons in the brainstem release these two potent messengers. They travel down the spinal cord, acting like a gentle wave shutting off the lights in a vast office building, floor by floor, until the entire structure is dark and quiet. They specifically target the motor neurons, the cells responsible for sending the command to move from your brain to your muscles. When GABA and glycine attach to these motor neurons, they lower the electrical charge within the cells, placing them in a state of deep, unresponsive rest. This effectively creates a chemical blockade. Your brain might be screaming a command to run, to jump, or to fly, but the message is stopped at the spinal cord, intercepted by this chemical barrier. The signal fades into silence before it can ever reach your arms or legs. This is the mechanism of REM atonia, a temporary paralysis that prevents us from acting out our dreams. Without this clever chemical lock, every dream about falling or running would result in thrashing limbs, potentially causing injury to the sleeper or anyone nearby. It is a safety feature, a heavy biological blanket tailored to keep the body still while the mind is active. In a typical night, the transition out of this state is seamless. As the brain cycles out of REM sleep and prepares for wakefulness, the release of GABA and glycine is halted. Enzymes quickly sweep through the system, clearing away the remaining inhibitory chemicals, like a tide washing away writing in the sand. The motor neurons regain their sensitivity, and the connection between will and movement is instantly restored. However, in the case of sleep paralysis, there is a rare mismatch in timing. The mind wakes up and achieves full awareness, but the chemical tide has not yet receded. The spinal cord is still bathed in GABA and glycine, holding the off switch firmly in place. You are conscious, attempting to move a finger or wiggle a toe, but the chemical messengers are still doing their job too well, inhibiting the signal. The heaviness you feel is not an external force, but rather the sensation of your own neural safeguards working overtime, a lingering chemical silence that has not quite finished its verse.
This silence dwells in the vast, foggy borderlands between being fully awake and fully asleep, a gray area where reality and dreams often bleed into one another. Scientists have mapped this territory into two distinct provinces. The journey downward, the descent from wakefulness into the heavy comfort of slumber, is known as the hypnagogic state. The word itself comes from the Greek, meaning leading to sleep. It is that pleasant drifting sensation where your thoughts begin to unravel into nonsense, where you might hear a sudden imaginary voice or see geometric patterns dancing behind your closed eyelids. It is a doorway we all walk through every night, usually without incident. However, the speed at which we cross this threshold varies immensely from person to person.
It makes me curious about your own relationship with this nightly transition. Are you a heavy sleeper who drops instantly into the deep like a stone in water? Or are you a light sleeper who tends to float near the surface for a long time? I would love to read about your sleep style in the comments, as understanding these differences reminds us that no two minds rest in exactly the same way. On the other side of the night, as we ascend back toward consciousness, we enter the hypnopompic state, or the leading away from sleep. Sleep paralysis is essentially a glitch that occurs specifically within these two narrow windows. It is a timing error in the biological handover. In a standard night, your brain waves smoothly transition from the rapid, alert beta waves of the day down into the relaxing alpha rhythm, and finally into the slow, drowsy theta waves that characterize these twilight states. When sleep paralysis strikes, this elegant slide into or out of consciousness is interrupted. Your mind abruptly shifts back into the alert alpha state. You become fully aware of the room, the sunlight, or the street lamp outside, but your motor control center missed the memo. It remains stuck in the lower frequencies, holding the body in that protective chemical lock. Because you are technically still straddling the line of the hypnagogic or hypnopompic state, the brain is still capable of projecting dream imagery. The hallucinations people see are essentially REM fragments leaking into the waking world, superimposed over the reality of the bedroom like a film reel projected onto a wall that is already painted. You are witnessing a hybrid reality, a confusion of signals where the brain's visual cortex is active and awake, but the brain's stem is still rigorously enforcing the stillness of deep sleep. This biological stalemate creates the perfect conditions for the mind to fabricate an explanation for its own helplessness. Since the body is frozen, the brain's primitive threat detection systems go offline in a peculiar way. They do not shut down, but rather they become hypersensitive. The amygdala, the almond-shaped cluster of neurons responsible for processing fear, detects the physical paralysis and interprets it not as sleep, but as vulnerability. In the wild, being unable to move while awake usually meant a predator had pinned you down. Therefore, your brain, operating on ancient survival logic, assumes there must be a threat nearby, even if the room is empty. This triggers one of the most common and unsettling features of the experience, the felt presence. Before you see anything, you simply know that you are not alone. It is an overwhelming, intuitive certainty that someone or something is standing just outside your field of vision, or perhaps lurking in the corner of the room. This sensation has a neurological basis. Researchers believe it stems from a disturbance in the temporoparietal junction, the part of the brain that constructs your body image and places you in 3D space. When this area misfires during the mixed state of sleep paralysis, the brain creates a duplicate of your own body map and projects it outward. Essentially, the stranger you sense in the room is a ghostly echo of your own self, misinterpreted by a confused mind.
However, the brain is a storyteller, and it rarely leaves a narrative unfinished. Once the feeling of a presence is established, the visual cortex attempts to corroborate it. This is where the intruder hallucination takes form. Because the room is often dark and the dreamer is in a state of panic, the mind engages in hypervigilant pareidolia. This is the same instinct that allows humans to spot a leopard in the brush or a face in the clouds, but here it is turned against you. The brain takes the ambiguous visual data available, a pile of clothes on a chair, the dark fold of a curtain, or the shadow cast by a door, and shapes it into a silhouette. It is remarkable that this intruder almost always appears as a shadow person, a dark, featureless figure devoid of specific traits. This lack of detail occurs because the hallucination is being generated by the emotional centers of the brain rather than the higher visual processing centers. The figure is a placeholder, a generic vessel for the fear you are feeling. The brain is working backward. You feel terror, so there must be a monster. You cannot move, so the monster must be holding you down. The hallucination is not the cause of the fear, but rather the brain's attempt to justify it. This biological mechanism explains why the experience is so remarkably consistent across human history. If you have ever woken up feeling an inexplicable weight on your chest or a sense of dread, you are sharing a sensation that has been documented for thousands of years. It is not a supernatural event, but a universal quirk of human hardware. Whether a person describes the intruder as a demon, a witch, an alien gray, or a shadowy thief depends entirely on their cultural vocabulary, but the underlying neurological blueprint remains exactly the same. The mind projects a shadow to make sense of the silence, creating an adversary out of thin air to explain the confusing reality of a body that refuses to wake up. This mental projection often takes a specific, tactile form that has terrified humanity for millennia, manifesting as a profound, crushing weight pressing down upon the chest. While the visual hallucinations supply the terrifying face of the intruder, it is this physical sense of constriction that provides the terrifying proof of their presence. For centuries before we understood the mechanics of REM atonia, people believed that demons, witches, or heavy goblins were literally sitting on their torsos, stealing the air from their lungs. In the famous 18th century painting, The Nightmare, by Henry Fuseli, this is depicted quite literally as a small, gnarled creature perched triumphantly atop a sleeping woman. The artistic representation perfectly captures the subjective experience, but the objective reality is a fascinating glitch in respiratory control. To understand why a sleeping person feels crushed, we have to look at how breathing changes when we enter the dream state. During normal waking life, your breathing is a mix of automatic processes and voluntary control, utilizing the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles between your ribs to expand the chest fully. However, during REM sleep, the body enters a distinct energy-saving mode.
The metabolic rate drops, and breathing becomes shallow, rapid, and irregular. Crucially, the paralysis that locks down the skeletal muscles to prevent you from acting out your dreams also affects the accessory muscles of the rib cage. The diaphragm continues to do its work, keeping you oxygenated with smaller, efficient breaths, but the chest wall itself becomes rigid and heavy, lacking the muscular engagement to expand deeply. When the mind wakes up inside this paralyzed vessel, its immediate reaction to the paralysis is often a spike in fear, and the natural physiological response to fear is a gasp, a sharp attempt to take a deep, voluntary breath.
The conscious mind sends a command to the chest muscles to heave open the lungs, but the muscles, still chemically locked in REM sleep, do not respond. You attempt to inhale deeply, but your rib cage refuses to expand. The brain, which relies on sensory feedback to make sense of the world, detects this resistance but misunderstands the cause. It registers that the chest is physically unable to rise despite the effort being exerted. In a split-second calculation, the brain searches its database for reasons why a chest might feel compressed and immovable. In the waking world, the only time your chest feels this restricted is if a heavy physical object is resting on top of it. Therefore, the brain creates a sensory hallucination to match the physical data. It decides there must be a weight. It constructs the sensation of a heavy pressure or an entity sitting on you to explain why you cannot take that deep panic breath. It is a terrifyingly logical conclusion drawn from incomplete data. Yet despite the sensation of suffocation or air hunger, the body is never actually in danger of running out of oxygen. The autonomic nervous system continues to regulate breathing perfectly through the diaphragm, maintaining appropriate oxygen levels throughout the episode. The feeling of suffocation is a phantom sensation born from the mismatch between the conscious desire to gasp and the body's automated, shallow sleep rhythms. The weight is not a demon, but simply the heavy, resting state of your own muscles, misinterpreted by a panicked mind that has woken up before the body was ready to hand back the controls. While that crushing stillness anchors you to the bed, another, perhaps even stranger phenomenon can occur simultaneously or entirely on its own. This is the realm of vestibular motor hallucinations, a complex term for a deeply visceral experience where the laws of physics seem to dissolve completely. Even though your eyes might be closed or fixed on the ceiling and your muscles are totally limp, your inner ear, the delicate apparatus responsible for balance, can send rogue signals to a waking mind. Because the brain has severed the connection to the limbs to keep you safe during REM sleep, it stops receiving the usual feedback that tells you where your arms and legs are positioned in space. In this sensory vacuum, the brain begins to improvise. Without the grounding data of gravity pushing against active muscles, the mind might interpret this lack of resistance not as paralysis, but as weightlessness. You might suddenly feel as though you are hovering inches above the mattress, or perhaps slowly drifting toward the ceiling like a helium balloon that has slipped its knot. For some, this manifests as a dizzying sensation of spinning, as if the bed has turned into a carousel, while for others, it is a sudden, gut-dropping feeling of falling through the floor, similar to that jolting hypnic jerk we often feel just as we drift off, but sustained over a longer, terrifyingly realistic duration. Have you ever experienced that sudden sensation of tripping or falling just as sleep takes you? It is a fascinating glimpse into how fragile our sense of position truly is. Unlike the intruder hallucinations, which project fear outward into the room in the form of a shadow or a presence, vestibular motor hallucinations turn that focus inward, distorting your own sense of embodiment. It's a glitch in the body schema, the internal map your brain maintains to know where you end and the rest of the world begins. This specific type of sensory error is often cited as the biological explanation for out-of-body experiences. When the brain is alert but the body is offline, the consciousness can feel as if it has detached from the physical shell. You might vividly feel the sensation of rolling over to escape the paralysis, feeling the texture of the sheets against your skin, the shifting of your weight, and the cool air on your back, only to snap back into the realization you never actually moved. The signal to roll over was sent, and the brain simulated the expected sensory response of moving, the feeling of the carpet, the shift in balance, but the body never followed orders. It's a phantom movement, a ghost memory of action playing out in the theater of the mind, while the body remains strictly disciplined by the chemistry of sleep. Neuroscientists point to a specific region called the temporoparietal junction as the conductor of these illusions. This area is responsible for integrating sensory data to create a coherent sense of self-location. When sleep paralysis disrupts the flow of information, this junction struggles to pin you down, resulting in that uncanny, fluid sensation of sliding, flying, or rotating. It's a remarkable testament to how much of our reality is a construct. We don't just inhabit our bodies, we actively hallucinate our position within them, moment by moment, based on a stream of data that sleep paralysis momentarily interrupts. While that crushing stillness anchors you to the bed, another, perhaps even stranger phenomenon can occur simultaneously or entirely on its own. This is the realm of vestibular motor hallucinations, a complex term for a deeply visceral experience where the laws of physics seem to dissolve completely. Even though your eyes might be closed or fixed on the ceiling and your muscles are totally limp, your inner ear, the delicate apparatus responsible for balance, can send rogue signals to a waking mind. Because the brain has severed the connection to the limbs to keep you safe during REM sleep, it stops receiving the usual feedback that tells you where your arms and legs are positioned in space. In this sensory vacuum, the brain begins to improvise. Without the grounding data of gravity pushing against active muscles, the mind might interpret this lack of resistance not as paralysis, but as weightlessness. You might suddenly feel as though you are hovering inches above the mattress, or perhaps slowly drifting toward the ceiling like a helium balloon that has slipped its knot. For some, this manifests as a dizzying sensation of spinning, as if the bed has turned into a carousel, while for others, it is a sudden, gut-dropping feeling of falling through the floor, similar to that jolting hypnic jerk we often feel just as we drift off, but sustained over a longer, terrifyingly realistic duration. Have you ever experienced that sudden sensation of tripping or falling just as sleep takes you? It is a fascinating glimpse into how fragile our sense of position truly is. Unlike the intruder hallucinations, which project fear outward into the room in the form of a shadow or a presence, vestibular motor hallucinations turn that focus inward, distorting your own sense of embodiment. It's a glitch in the body schema, the internal map your brain maintains to know where you end and the rest of the world begins. This specific type of sensory error is often cited as the biological explanation for out-of-body experiences. When the brain is alert but the body is offline, the consciousness can feel as if it has detached from the physical shell. You might vividly feel the sensation of rolling over to escape the paralysis, feeling the texture of the sheets against your skin, the shifting of your weight, and the cool air on your back, only to snap back into the realization you never actually moved. The signal to roll over was sent, and the brain simulated the expected sensory response of moving, the feeling of the carpet, the shift in balance, but the body never followed orders. It's a phantom movement, a ghost memory of action playing out in the theater of the mind, while the body remains strictly disciplined by the chemistry of sleep. Neuroscientists point to a specific region called the temporoparietal junction as the conductor of these illusions. This area is responsible for integrating sensory data to create a coherent sense of self-location. When sleep paralysis disrupts the flow of information, this junction struggles to pin you down, resulting in that uncanny fluid sensation of sliding, flying, or rotating.
This creates a fascinating but turbulent imbalance during a sleep paralysis episode, where you possess a heightened capacity for emotion and terror, but a significantly reduced capacity for logic and reasoning. Evolution has wired this tiny structure to err on the side of caution, prioritizing survival above all else. In the ancient world, it was far safer for a human to mistake a shadow for a predator than to mistake a predator for a shadow. Consequently, when you wake up and realize you cannot move, the amygdala interprets this immobility not as a biological safety switch, but as a situation of extreme vulnerability. The inability to move triggers a primal fight or flight response, flooding the system with adrenaline. Your heart rate might accelerate and your breathing might feel restricted. Yet because the major muscle groups remain chemically locked, this surge of energy has nowhere to go. This physiological deadlock sends a panic signal back to the brain, confirming that something is terribly wrong. This is where the mind, in its desperate scramble to make sense of the chaos, begins to improvise. The human brain is an engine of meaning. It despises unexplained signals. When the amygdala floods your system with feelings of dread and the sensation of being watched, the narrative center of the brain attempts to find a source for that fear. Since there is no actual threat in the quiet safety of your bedroom, the mind projects one, hallucinating a cause to match the feeling. This is often why the hallucinations associated with sleep paralysis are not random, but specifically menacing. The intruder, or the shadow figure, is essentially a creation of the mind, trying to justify the raw chemical terror pumped out by the amygdala. It creates a monster to explain the fear, rather than feeling fear because of a monster. The tragedy of this mechanism is that it creates a self-perpetuating cycle. You feel fear, so you hallucinate a threat, and seeing the threat makes you struggle against the paralysis. When the struggle fails, it increases the feeling of helplessness, which further stimulates the amygdala, intensifying the fear and making the hallucination appear more vivid or closer. It is a biological feedback loop of high-octane emotion occurring in a body that appears from the outside to be peacefully resting. This creates a peculiar state of sensory heightening known as threat hypervigilance. The brain, convinced it is under considerable stress, directs all available resources to scanning the immediate environment for the source of the danger. Because the motor cortex is inhibited and you cannot move your head to look around, the brain relies heavily on auditory input, effectively turning up the volume on your hearing to detect even the faintest disturbance. It is a survival mechanism gone awry, where the mind becomes a sentry in the dark, desperately searching for an enemy that justifies the intense fear it is feeling. This biological amplification often results in one of the most common features of the experience: auditory hallucinations. In the absence of real external noise, the auditory cortex begins to interpret the random firing of neurons as sound. This helps explain why so many episodes are accompanied by a loud buzzing, a high-pitched ringing, or a sensation of static electricity crackling near the ears. It is similar to turning the gain up on a recording microphone until you hear the hum of the equipment itself. Your brain is straining so hard to hear a threat that it begins to hear its own internal functioning. Some researchers believe this specific buzzing sound may be related to the rapid movement of the middle ear muscles, which spasm during the shift in consciousness.
However, the threat detection system does not stop at internal static. It also aggressively monitors the ambient sounds of the room, with often terrifying creativity. A branch scraping against a window pane is no longer just a branch. The hyper-alert amygdala instantly classifies it as the scratch of a fingernail. The natural settling of the house's timber, which might normally go unnoticed, is amplified and reinterpreted as the distinct rhythmic sound of footsteps approaching the bed. This is auditory pareidolia, where the mind forces a recognizable pattern onto chaotic or random noise, much like seeing faces in clouds, but geared entirely towards survival and threat identification. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this auditory hypervigilance is the perception of voices. Because humans are social creatures, our brains are wired to prioritize human speech above all other sounds. In this confused state between dreaming and waking, the brain often misinterprets the rush of blood in the ears or the sound of your own breathing as whispering. It is not uncommon for people to report hearing their own name being called out in the darkness. This occurs because one's own name is the most significant auditory signal a human can receive. And when the brain is scrambling to make sense of high-stress signals, it defaults to the most urgent pattern it knows. The result is a sensory environment where every creak, hum, and whisper reinforce the illusion that you are not alone in the room. This specific sensation of a distinct, heavy presence in the room is actually the hidden key to understanding one of the most common words in our modern vocabulary, a word we use constantly without realizing its true terrifying origins. When we speak of a nightmare today, we almost always mean a frightening dream, a sequence of visual events played out behind closed eyelids that scares us awake. But historically, linguistically, and medically, a nightmare was never just a bad dream. It was a specific physical event, and that event was sleep paralysis. To understand why, we have to look back at the architecture of the word itself, peeling back the layers of Old English and Proto-Germanic history. In the modern ear, mare conjures images of a female horse, perhaps galloping through a dark field, but this is a linguistic accident, a red herring that has confused imagery for centuries. The mare in nightmare has no connection to horses.
The resulting sensation was not a visual story of being chased or falling, which are the hallmarks of a modern bad dream, but rather a crushing physical weight that rendered the victim unable to move or breathe. This suggests that for thousands of years, the word nightmare was exclusively the name for the condition of sleep paralysis. The nightmare was the night crusher, the heavy spirit that pinned you to the mattress. It is fascinating to consider how many ghost stories and legends are actually biological descriptions of the human nervous system misfiring, wrapped in the cloak of folklore. There is a gentle comfort in reading these old stories, seeing how our ancestors tried to make sense of the unexplained phenomena of the body. Speaking of these ancient explanations, I'm curious if you enjoy reading history or folklore before you go to sleep. There is something very grounding about connecting with the past as the day winds down. Feel free to share your favorite bedtime reading topics in the comments. As we look deeper into the history of the word, we see that the distinction between a dream and a nightmare was much stricter in the past than it is now. In the 18th century, when Samuel Johnson compiled his famous Dictionary of the English Language, he did not define a nightmare as a frightening dream. He noted that it was often accompanied by silence and an inability to speak. This is a perfect clinical description of sleep paralysis,
the paralysis of the vocal cords, the pressure on the chest wall caused by the intercostal muscles being relaxed in REM sleep, and the mind waking up before the body. For centuries, people distinguished between a bad dream, which they might call a fearful vision, and the nightmare, which was a somatic, bodily attack. It wasn't until the 19th and 20th centuries, as science began to strip away the belief in goblins and spirits, that the specific meaning of the word diluted. The mare lost her identity as a chest-crushing demon and faded into a general term for any bad experience during sleep. However, the legacy of that original meaning survives in the very physiology of the experience. When you feel that phantom weight on your ribs during an episode of sleep paralysis, you are experiencing the literal original definition of the nightmare, bridging the gap between modern neurology and ancient myth. This bridge is nowhere more clearly constructed than in the specific tradition of the old hag, a figure that dominates the nocturnal folklore of Newfoundland. While the rest of the world moved toward clinical definitions, the isolated fishing communities of this North Atlantic island preserved a much older, more visceral understanding of sleep paralysis, maintaining a direct linguistic line to the ancient past. Here, the experience is not described as having a nightmare, but rather as being hag-ridden, a phrase that transforms the event from a passive dream into a physical assault by an external entity. In these traditions, the hag is not merely a visual hallucination, but a tactile one, defined almost entirely by the sensation of crushing weight, as if a heavy, withered figure has climbed atop the sleeper's chest to steal their breath. This specific manifestation of the intruder serves as a fascinating example of how culture shapes the narrative of biology. The physiological paralysis is the canvas, but the old hag is the painting that local folklore creates upon it. The consistency of this figure in Newfoundland is striking, often described with similar details by people who have never met. The smell of musty fabric, the sound of shuffling footsteps approaching the bed, and finally, the terrifying, suffocating pressure on the rib cage. It is a legacy that traces its roots back to the Anglo-Saxon mara, a word that gives us the second half of nightmare, referring to a crusher or a goblin that torments the sleeper. In the lore of the British Isles, which heavily influenced Newfoundland's population, this being was often believed to be a witch or a malevolent spirit seeking to ride the sleeper like a horse, leaving them exhausted and breathless come morning. What makes the old hag tradition so essential to understanding the history of sleep paralysis is how it flourished in isolation. Because these communities were tightly knit and geographically separated from the mainland, the description of the hag became a standardized, shared vocabulary. When a fisherman woke up unable to move, he didn't question his sanity or fear a stroke. He knew, thanks to the stories told by his grandmother and neighbors, that the hag had paid him a visit. This socialization of the hallucination fundamentally changed the experience, perhaps making it no less terrifying, but certainly making it less lonely. It turned a private neurological glitch into a communal event, where the crushing weight on the chest was as accepted a part of life as the fog rolling in off the ocean or the turning of the tides. This folklore also offers us a glimpse into the desperate measures people took to protect themselves before the advent of sleep science, utilizing apotropaic magic, rituals designed to ward off evil. You might find stories of people placing a knife under the mattress, believing the cold iron would repel the hag, or sleeping with a Bible on their chest to create a holy barrier against the pressure. These rituals reveal the intense physical reality of the experience. You do not place a physical object to stop a bad dream, but you do to stop a physical intruder. The hag, therefore, stands as the ultimate Western embodiment of this phenomenon, a figure born from the biological necessity of the paralyzed body trying to explain why it cannot breathe, solidifying the sensation of weight into the form of an ancient, heavy crone. Across the Channel and deep into the dense forests of Germany, this same suffocating weight was attributed not to a witch, but to the Alp. Unlike the whimsical, light-footed elves of modern fantasy, the Alp was a heavier, earthier spirit, often depicted as a malevolent, dwarf-like creature wearing a tarnished cap. These beings were believed to sit squarely on the sleeper's chest, compressing the rib cage until breath became impossible. The folklore was so granular, so deeply embedded in the daily anxiety of the people, that it even offered physical evidence of the attack.
If a person woke with their hair matted or tangled, a common occurrence after a restless night of tossing and turning, it was said to be an alpsoft, or an elf lock, twisted by the creature's fingers as it held the sleeper down. Moving northward into the chilling winds of Scandinavia, the entity shifts form again, evolving into the Mara. The Mara was often believed to be a damned woman, a spirit capable of shape-shifting into formless mist, smoke, or even something as granular as sand, allowing her to slip through the smallest keyhole or crack in the floorboards to reach the sleeping victim. Once inside, she would materialize and ride the sleeper, much like a rider on a horse, a terrifying intimacy that explained the feeling of physical exhaustion upon waking. The ancient Norse sagas treat the Mara not as a hallucination, but as a genuine physical threat, one that could trample a person to death in their own bed, leaving no mark other than the silence of the room. This concept of trampling or pressing travels south into the Romance languages as well. In France, the word for nightmare is cauchemar. Thus, every time a French speaker describes a bad dream, they are linguistically invoking the memory of a physical entity pressing down on them. In Catalonia, the figure transforms into the pesanta, often visualized not as a humanoid, but as a massive, heavy dog or cat with paws made of iron. This creature would invade the bedroom and place a single, impossibly heavy paw upon the chest of the sleeper, pinning them to the mattress and stealing their breath. Similarly, in the Abruzzo region of Italy, the pan de fece was a witch-like presence, sometimes dressed in white, whose arrival was signaled by a paralyzing pressure and a vivid, hallucinated sense of doom. For centuries, these myths served a crucial societal function beyond simple ghost stories. They were the only available scientific explanation for sudden nocturnal illnesses. Before the discovery of heart failure, sleep apnea, or sudden unexpected death syndrome, communities needed a way to rationalize why a healthy person might pass away in their sleep, or why someone might wake up gasping for air, clutching their chest in panic. By blaming the Alp, the Mara, or the Pesanta, the terrifying randomness of biology was given a name and a face, transforming a medical mystery into a battle against a supernatural intruder that, with the right charms or prayers, might effectively be warded off. Traveling across the globe to the east, we find that the geography of the night changes, yet the terror remains remarkably consistent. In Japan, this phenomenon is widely known as kanashibari. The term itself is poetry of the frightening kind, rooted in the ancient esoteric practices of mountain ascetics and Buddhist monks. It translates roughly to being bound with metal chains. Unlike the Western hag who sits upon the chest, this concept suggests a total, unyielding restriction,
as if invisible iron bands have been wrapped tight around the sleeper's limbs, fastening them to the bed. Originally, kanashibari was believed to be a magical technique used by powerful monks to paralyze their enemies, freezing them in place with a spiritual force that mimicked the rigidity of metal. Over centuries, the term drifted from the realm of sorcery into the bedroom, becoming the standard description for that helpless state where the mind wakes up but the muscles refuse to follow. It is so culturally recognized in Japan that it frequently appears in pop culture, manga, and anime, treating the experience not merely as a medical glitch, but as a spiritual rite of passage or a psychic attack. A similar heavy hand rests on sleepers in Chinese folklore. The imagery is specific. It is not merely being paralyzed, but being pinned down by a spirit that has entered the room. Traditional beliefs often suggested that a spirit, perhaps a mouse or a small demon, was sitting on the sleeper to steal their breath or their essence. This interpretation aligns perfectly with the physical sensation of breathlessness that often accompanies the paralysis, which we now know is caused by the natural relaxation of the intercostal muscles during REM sleep, but which feels frighteningly like suffocation to the conscious mind. What is particularly fascinating about these Asian perspectives is how frequently they are reported in modern times compared to other regions. Recent studies have highlighted a curious trend where rates of sleep paralysis appear significantly higher in certain Asian student populations, particularly in Japan, China, and Korea. Researchers do not blame ghosts for this statistical spike, but rather the intense academic culture and the resulting sleep debt. In societies where burning the midnight oil is a sign of diligence and where short, fragmented naps, like the Japanese practice of inemuri, are common, the erratic sleep schedules create the perfect biological storm for REM atonia to spill over into wakefulness. The remedies for kanashibari and guiya chuang were historically as varied as the spirits blamed for them. While Westerners might rely on prayer, Eastern traditions often looked to physical positioning and protective objects to break the bond. There is a long-standing belief that sleeping on your back makes you vulnerable to the ghost press, a belief that modern science actually supports, as the supine position is the most common trigger for episodes due to how gravity affects the airway and soft palate. Have you ever noticed that you sleep more deeply or perhaps have stranger dreams when you lie on your back compared to your side? To combat this vulnerability, families might place a knife or a sharp object under the pillow or mattress, believing that the presence of metal or a blade cuts through the spiritual binding. Others would place amulets written by monks above the bed frame or on the door. These rituals, whether placing a knife or changing sleeping positions, served the same psychological purpose. They gave the sleeper a sense of agency, a tool to fight back against the invisible weight that sought to hold them down in the dark. Just as the monks of Europe sought divine protection from the mare, cultures across the Middle East and Africa developed their own rich, complex tapestries of lore to explain this terrifying nocturnal paralysis. In many Islamic cultures, the experience is inextricably linked to the jinn, spirit entities made of smokeless fire who exist alongside humans in a parallel dimension.
While jinn can be benevolent or neutral, the specific experience of sleep paralysis is often attributed to a malevolent interaction, sometimes called the kabus or the jathum. This entity is said to sit heavily upon the sleeper's chest, effectively locking them in place and stealing their breath. The description of the Jathum mirrors the old hag of the West almost perfectly in terms of physical sensation, the crushing weight, the inability to scream, the feeling of a presence in the room. Yet the interpretation is distinctly spiritual. For a person raised in this tradition, The paralysis is not merely a biological glitch, but a moment where the veil between the human world and the world of the jinn has become dangerously thin, allowing an entity to cross over and pin the sleeper to their mattress. Traveling south to the rich cultural landscape of West Africa, specifically within the Yoruba traditions of Nigeria, we find the phenomenon known as Ogun Oru. The phrase translates roughly to nocturnal warfare, a powerful term that reframes the experience not just as a passive haunting, but as an active spiritual battle. In this worldview, the paralysis is often interpreted as a struggle against malevolent spirits or even witches who seek to disturb the sleeper's peace. The cultural narrative here suggests that the paralyzed state is a manifestation of a conflict happening on a spiritual plane, where the dreamer's soul is engaged in a strenuous fight for dominance, explaining why the physical body feels so exhausted and drained upon waking, despite having not moved a muscle. Further south, in the folklore of South Africa, the paralysis takes on a different, more creature-like form known as the tokoloshe. Described in legends as a short, hairy, water sprite-like being, the tokoloshe is a mischievous and often malevolent spirit that can cause all manner of trouble for the household, including sitting on a sleeping person's chest to suffocate them. The fear of this entity was once so prevalent that it influenced the way people arranged their sleeping quarters. It became common practice to place beds on top of bricks, raising them higher off the ground, in the belief that the short stature of the tokoloshe would prevent it from reaching the sleeper. This is a fascinating example of how a psychological phenomenon can manifest in physical reality, altering the very architecture of a bedroom. What these varied traditions reveal is a profound truth about the human mind. While the biological hardware of sleep paralysis is universal, the same misfiring of brain chemicals, the same REM atonia, the software is cultural. The brain, panicked and searching for a cause for its paralysis, scans its internal library of fears to find a suitable culprit. If your library contains stories of jinn, you will see a jinn. If it contains the tokoloshe, you will see the tokoloshe. The culture we are raised in provides the costume that the hallucination wears, dressing the invisible biological force in the familiar, terrifying garb of our local legends.
It is a profound testament to the power of the mind that it can take a physiological glitch, a mismatch between waking and moving, and construct an intricate, terrifying narrative of interstellar contact that feels as real as any other memory. This compulsion to give form to the formless has inevitably spilled over into our most enduring works of art, serving as a bridge between the solitary sufferer and the rest of the world. Before we had fMRI scans or neuroscientific explanations, we had paint and canvas, and perhaps no image captures the essence of this phenomenon more famously than Henry Fuseli's 1781 masterpiece simply titled The Nightmare. Even if you do not know the title, you likely recognize the image instantly. It depicts a woman in a deep, sprawling sleep, draped across a divan, while a small, gnarled demon sits squarely on her chest, staring out at the viewer with a heavy, oppressive weight. From behind a velvet curtain in the background, the ghostly head of a horse with milky, blind eyes peers into the room, observing the scene with an eerie detachment. For centuries, this painting has been the visual shorthand for sleep paralysis, so much so that many believe the word nightmare itself derives from the mare, or horse, in the painting, though the term actually predates the artwork. Fuseli tapped into a universal anxiety so effectively that print reproductions of the painting hung in parlors across Europe. It resonated because it gave a physical shape to the invisible pressure of the chest and the sense of a malevolent presence, validating the experiences of thousands who had previously suffered in silence. Literature, too, has provided a sanctuary for these vivid descriptions, often tucked away within larger stories of adventure or romance, acting as a secret nod to those who know the feeling. In Herman Melville's Moby Dick, the narrator Ishmael recounts a childhood memory that is a textbook description of a hypnopompic hallucination. He describes awaking in a dark room, feeling a phantom hand placed within his own, and being utterly paralyzed with a supernatural fear, unable to move a muscle or utter a sound. It is a quiet, haunting passage that speaks to the tactile nature of the condition, the sensation of being touched when no one is there. This literary tradition extends deep into the roots of modern horror as well. H.P. Lovecraft, the father of cosmic horror, drew heavy inspiration from his own lifelong struggles with parasomnias. His night gaunts, faceless creatures that tickle their victims into submission, and his overarching themes of helplessness in the face of ancient, unseen forces mirror the psychological landscape of the paralyzed sleeper. French writer Guy de Maupassant also penned a terrifyingly accurate account in his story The Horla, describing a feverish sleeper who feels someone kneeling on his chest, strangling him while he tries in vain to cry out. These artistic interpretations serve a crucial function in human empathy. For those who have never experienced the lock of sleep paralysis, it is nearly impossible to understand the specific texture of the fear. It is not just being scared, it is being trapped in one's own vessel. Art bridges that gap. By painting the demon or writing the ghost, these artists took a terrifying physiological event and turned it into something that could be observed and understood, transforming a lonely, subjective horror into a shared cultural artifact. While art gave us a way to visualize the experience, medicine provided the map to navigate it. For the vast majority of people, this terrifying lock-in is a singular, isolated event, a rare glitch in the biological software that might happen once in a lifetime or perhaps never at all. This is what specialists call isolated sleep paralysis, a fleeting overlap of states that occurs in otherwise healthy brains. However, for those living with narcolepsy, the boundaries between the dreaming world and the waking world are far more porous, closer to a phantom border that is easily crossed than a fortified wall. Narcolepsy is often caricatured in pop culture as simply falling asleep mid-sentence, but the reality is far more complex and reveals deep truths about why sleep paralysis happens to anyone at all. It is fundamentally a disorder of state boundary control, where the brain loses the ability to regulate the cycle of sleeping and waking. Clinicians often refer to the tetrad of narcolepsy, a collection of 4 primary symptoms that paint a picture of a brain unable to keep sleep in its proper container. Of course, there is excessive daytime sleepiness, a persistent fog that no amount of coffee can truly lift. But the other 3 symptoms are essentially REM sleep intruding into wakefulness, leaking out like water through a crack in a dam. Sleep paralysis is a frequent visitor here, occurring not just occasionally, but often multiple times a week, transforming the transition into sleep into a consistent battleground rather than a peaceful descent. But to truly understand the mechanics of this lock-in, we must look at the most striking phenomenon in narcolepsy tetrad, known as cataplexy. This symptom serves as the smoking gun linking paralysis to our emotions. Imagine hearing a funny joke, feeling a surge of joy or perhaps a flash of anger, and suddenly feeling your knees buckle or your jaw slack. This is cataplexy. It is a sudden, temporary loss of muscle tone while you're completely awake and conscious. It is the brain mistakenly firing the paralysis command meant for REM sleep, but doing so in response to an emotional trigger while you're standing up.
This confirms that the paralysis mechanism is a distinct neural circuit, one that can be activated independently of actual sleep. The final piece of this puzzle involves hypnagogic hallucinations, where the dream state overlays reality before sleep fully takes hold. When you combine these elements, you see that narcolepsy is essentially a failure of the brain's safety gates. We now know that this instability is often caused by the loss of specific neurons that produce a neurotransmitter called orexin or hypocretin. Think of orexin as the chemical conductor that keeps the orchestra of the brain playing in time. It stabilizes the switch between being awake and sleeping. Without it, the switch flickers. This discovery was monumental not just for patients, but for the general understanding of sleep paralysis. It proved that the demon on the chest was actually a misplaced fragment of REM physiology.
By studying the extreme cases where the barrier is broken, scientists were able to understand the rare moments when the barrier simply leaks for the rest of us. It showed us that sleep paralysis is not a disorder of the spirit, but a very specific mechanical misfiring in the architecture of the brainstem, a realization that strips away the supernatural dread and replaces it with biological fascination. This shift from mechanical failure to biological blueprint leads us naturally to the question of inheritance. We often wonder if the tendency to wake within a dream is something we acquire from the stress of the modern world, or something written into the very code of our existence. To answer this, researchers have turned to the most reliable natural experiment available to science, which is the study of twins. By comparing identical twins who share nearly all their genetic material with fraternal twins who share only about half, studies have revealed an undeniable pattern. If one identical twin experiences sleep paralysis, the likelihood of the other twin experiencing it is significantly higher than what we see in fraternal pairs. This concordance suggests that while stress or sleep deprivation may trigger the specific episode, the underlying susceptibility is often handed down through the bloodline, a silent inheritance waiting for the right moment to surface. Specific genetic markers have begun to emerge from the shadows of this research to clarify the mechanism, most notably a gene known as PER2. This gene is a crucial component of the body's circadian clock, the internal timekeeper that regulates the precise rhythm of our sleep-wake cycles. Variations in the PER2 gene do not just disrupt when we sleep, but the structural integrity of sleep itself. When this genetic instruction is slightly altered, the boundaries between rapid eye movement sleep and wakefulness become porous. It creates a biological environment where the brain can slip into consciousness before the chemical command to paralyze the muscles has been revoked. It implies that for many, sleep paralysis is not a random glitch, but a distinct feature of their unique circadian rhythm.
This vulnerability finds its most fertile ground when the body is laid out in the supine position, flat against the mattress. It is a curious quirk of our biology that the simple act of sleeping on one's back serves as the most reliable trigger for these nocturnal intrusions. Researchers have found that a staggering majority of sleep paralysis episodes occurs strictly in this posture, creating a direct link between the geometry of the body and the architecture of the dream. When you lie face up, gravity exerts a subtle but persistent pull on the soft tissues of the throat, specifically the soft palate and the tongue. As the muscles relax into their deepest state of rest, these tissues can slide backward, narrowing the airway just enough to require more effort to breathe. This is not always snoring or apnea, but a slight resistance that the sleeping brain detects with remarkable sensitivity. Sensing this minor shift in airflow, the brain nudges the mind toward wakefulness, a protective reflex to ensure oxygen intake remains steady. However, because the body is deep in REM atonia, the muscles do not respond. The mind wakes up to fix a breathing issue, only to find the machinery of the breath feels heavy and unresponsive. This specific physiological disconnect helps explain the universal nature of the intruder hallucination that often accompanies the paralysis. In the supine position, the chest wall is effectively fighting gravity to expand. During REM sleep, the accessory muscles we use for deep, heaving breaths are paralyzed, leaving only the diaphragm to do the work. When lying on the back, the physical weight of the chest, combined with this muscle paralysis, creates a sensation of constriction. The waking mind, searching for a logical cause for this heaviness, often interprets the sensation as an external entity pressing down on the rib cage. It creates a feedback loop where the tactile pressure on the back provides a sense of being pinned, while the resistance in the chest conjures the image of a weight sitting upon the sleeper. This is why the most effective preventative measure is often the simplest, a shift in gravity. Sleeping on the side or stomach changes the alignment of the throat and reduces the sensation of pressure on the chest. In folklore, there were even remedies involving sewing objects into the back of sleeping garments to prevent rolling over, a primitive form of what modern sleep medicine calls positional therapy. Beyond the physical placement of limbs, the invisible architecture of time plays an equally pivotal role in whether the mind and body remain synchronized. Our systems operate on a delicate internal schedule, a circadian rhythm that dictates not just when we feel tired, but specifically when we are meant to enter the protective paralysis of REM sleep. Deep within the brain, situated in the hypothalamus, lies a tiny, rice-sized cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is the body's master clock. It acts as the conductor of a complex orchestra, interpreting signals of light and darkness from the optic nerves to regulate hormone release, body temperature, and the sleep-wake cycle. When this master clock is allowed to run naturally, it ensures that the paralysis of muscle atonia only occurs when we are safely deep within a dream. However, the modern world is filled with disruptions that confuse this ancient timekeeper. We stay up late, bathed in the blue light of screens. We fly across longitudes in mere hours, experiencing jet lag, and we work rotating shifts that demand alertness when biology demands rest. When the circadian rhythm is fragmented, the precise timing required to align the brain's consciousness with the body's muscle control begins to drift. For individuals with erratic sleep schedules, the risk of sleep paralysis rises significantly because the brain loses its ability to predict exactly when to initiate the lockdown of the muscles. It may mistakenly trigger atonia while the mind is still hovering in a state of wakefulness, or it may persist in paralyzing the body as the mind wakes up, simply because the internal schedule is in disarray. This desynchronization often correlates with core body temperature. Usually, our temperature drops to its lowest point during the deepest phases of sleep. If you attempt to sleep when your body temperature is naturally rising, perhaps trying to catch up on lost rest during the late morning, the brain struggles to transition smoothly through the standard sleep stages. Instead of drifting down a gentle staircase of non-REM sleep, an exhausted and confused brain might collapse directly into REM sleep. This rapid entry, known as sleep onset REM, is a primary gateway to sleep paralysis. This is why napping can occasionally be a trigger. If you are sleep deprived and take a long nap, the brain, starving for REM sleep,
rushes to satisfy that hunger immediately. You might wake from such a nap feeling trapped between the vividness of a dream and the reality of your room, your body still heavy with sleep while your mind is abruptly alert. Everyone reacts to these timing shifts differently based on their inherent chronotype. Some of us naturally rise with the sun, finding it easy to sleep early, while others feel most alert and creative in the deep quiet of the night. It would be lovely to hear about your own rhythm. Let me know in the comments if you are a night owl who thrives in the dark or an early bird who loves the morning light, and whether you find it harder to truly relax when you have to sleep against that natural grain. Understanding your chronotype is a subtle defense against sleep paralysis, as fighting your natural inclination fragments the sleep architecture, leaving the door ajar for the waking mind to stumble in on the sleeping body. That stumbling mind is often carrying heavy baggage, and this is where the intricate relationship between our emotional state and sleep paralysis becomes most profound. It is widely understood among sleep researchers that high levels of stress act as a primary fuel for these episodes, creating a turbulent atmosphere in the brain that makes smooth transitions between wakefulness and sleep far more difficult to achieve.
You can imagine the anxious brain as a dedicated night watchman who refuses to leave their post. Even as the body receives the chemical instructions to shut down and lock the muscles for REM sleep, that mental watchman is still pacing the hallways, flashlight in hand, scanning for trouble. This friction between a hyper-alert mind and an immobilized body is the perfect breeding ground for sleep paralysis, as the consciousness is simply too active to be fully pulled under the tide of sleep. This dynamic is often bi-directional, creating a loop where anxiety disrupts sleep quality, leading to fragmentation, and that very fragmentation opens the door for waking up during REM. For those navigating conditions like post-traumatic stress, this threshold is even more sensitive, as the nervous system is often conditioned to view vulnerability as dangerous. In this state, the natural letting go that happens as we drift off can be misinterpreted by the brain as a loss of control, prompting a sudden surge of alertness just as the body is paralyzed, causing the two states to collide. It raises an interesting thought about how we prepare for rest. I would love to hear what specific routine helps you quiet your mind before bed, whether it's reading, meditation, or perhaps listening to a voice like this one. Do share your methods in the comments. Beyond general stress, there is a fascinating correlation with panic disorders, which centers on how we interpret our own biological signals. People who are prone to panic are naturally more attuned to bodily sensations, noticing a slight change in heartbeat or a shift in breathing that others might ignore. During sleep paralysis, the natural relaxation of the chest muscles can feel like a heavy weight, and while a calm mind might perceive this simply as a physical oddity, an anxious mind is more likely to interpret the sensation as suffocation or entrapment. This interpretation can quickly spiral into a fear of sleep cycle, technically known as somnophobia, where the dread of having another episode creates the very stress that causes it. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where the bed is viewed not as a sanctuary, but as a place of vigilance, keeping the brain active enough to witness its own paralysis night after night. Understanding this connection is often the first step in breaking the loop, as realizing that the fear itself is the architect of the experience can help strip the phenomenon of its power. Alongside this silent immobility, there exists a related phenomenon that often acts as a noisy prelude to the paralysis itself. In the clinical world, it carries the rather dramatic title of exploding head syndrome, a name that sounds infinitely more dangerous than the experience actually is. While sleep paralysis is defined by a lack of movement, this accompanying condition is defined by a sudden, hallucinatory burst of sensory input.
Imagine drifting toward the edge of sleep, your thoughts becoming abstract and loose, when suddenly a deafening crash rings out. It might sound like a cymbal being struck next to your ear, a heavy door slamming, a gunshot, or a crack of thunder. For the sleeper, the instinct is to assume a tangible object has fallen in the room, yet the silence of the house remains unbroken. This auditory hallucination originates entirely within the neural pathways. It is a benign hypnagogic event, a sensory glitch that shares the same territory as the paralysis we have been exploring. The prevailing theory suggests that this occurs due to a hiccup in the brain's reticular formation, the area responsible for regulating the transition between waking and sleeping. As you fall asleep, your brain usually turns off its sensory processing centers in a smooth, gradual fade-out. However, in those prone to this syndrome, the auditory neurons may delay their shutdown and then fire at all once in a sudden wave of activity. It is the biological equivalent of pulling the plug on a speaker system while the volume is turned up high, a sudden pop of static feedback as the power cuts. The connection to sleep paralysis is strong because this loud, phantom noise acts as a potent trigger for lucidity. The imaginary crash startles the conscious mind back into high alert, pulling you up from the depths of the hypnagogic state. However, because the body has already received the signal to immobilize its muscles for REM sleep, you wake up mentally sharp due to the noise, but physically frozen. The explosion effectively trapdoors you into the state of paralysis. It is worth noting that occasionally, this auditory burst is accompanied by a visual component, such as a flash of bright light or static behind closed eyelids, known as a phosphene. Despite the intensity of the sound and light and the subsequent paralysis, the event is entirely painless. It leaves no lingering ache, only a lingering surprise. Understanding that this explosion is merely a harmless misfiring of neurons, a false alarm in the brain's security system, can significantly reduce the anxiety of the moment, allowing you to drift back down into the quiet dark without the fear that something is physically wrong. Once the realization settles in that the body is simply in a temporary holding pattern and not in immediate danger, the mind often shifts from fear to a desire for control. While the experience of being unable to move is the defining characteristic of this state, the paralysis is rarely absolute, and there are subtle, gentle ways to signal to the brain that the waking world has returned. The most common and effective method relies on the physiological nuances of sleep atonia. Since the chemical blockade that prevents movement is concentrated primarily on the large muscle groups, the legs, arms, and torso, the inhibition is often weaker at the very edges of the body. This is why many people find success by focusing their entire mental will on a single small point of the anatomy, such as the pinky finger or the big toe. Rather than trying to lift a heavy arm or sit up, which can feel like pushing against a concrete wall and often leads to increased panic, the strategy involves sending a small, precise command to wiggle just one digit. It requires a calm, singular focus, almost like a meditative practice. You simply visualize the toe moving, concentrating on the sensation of the muscle contracting until a tiny twitch occurs.
This small movement acts as a key turning in a lock. Once the brain registers voluntary motor control in the extremity, the signal often cascades up the limb, breaking the chemical paralysis and restoring full movement to the rest of the body. If the extremities remain stubborn, one might look to the only part of the body that sleep paralysis technically exempts by definition. Because this state is a fragment of rapid eye movement sleep, the eyes are remarkably free to move. The muscles controlling the eyes are on a different circuit than the skeletal muscles, meaning you can often look around the room even while the body is frozen.
Some find that moving their eyes rapidly from left to right or rolling them in circles serves as a wake-up call to the brainstem. It disrupts the static visual imagery of the dream state and forces the brain to process real-time visual data, which can help snap the system out of the paralysis loop. Similarly, the autonomic functions of the body, specifically breathing, offer a bridge back to full wakefulness. While you cannot control the automatic rate of your heart easily, the diaphragm is a unique muscle that operates under both automatic and voluntary control. During paralysis, your breathing continues automatically, but you can choose to alter its rhythm. By taking a sudden, deep breath or intentionally changing the pace of inhalation, you send a strong signal to the nervous system. Some even try to produce a small cough or a grunt in the back of the throat. Since the vocal cords are muscles, this can be difficult, but the attempt to engage the diaphragm for a cough is often jarring enough to shatter the delicate equilibrium of the paralysis. However, there is a completely different school of thought regarding these moments, one that aligns more closely with relaxation than struggle. It suggests that fighting the paralysis is exactly what makes it terrifying. The sensation of pressure on the chest or the feeling of being trapped is often amplified by the brain's panic response. When you struggle, the amygdala fires more intensely, deepening the hallucination and the feeling of suffocation. The alternative technique is known as the surrender method. Instead of trying to wiggle a toe or force a cough, you simply accept the weight. You mentally lean into the heaviness, acknowledging that the paralysis is harmless and temporary. By relaxing into the sensation rather than fighting it, the fear response dissipates. Often, this act of surrendering causes the paralysis to fade naturally within seconds, or it allows you to drift peacefully back into a lucid dream, turning a frightening moment into an opportunity for rest. This shift in perspective changes the experience entirely, transforming the paralysis from a prison into a launch pad. When you are in this state, mind awake, body asleep, you have effectively stumbled upon the precise physiological trigger required for a phenomenon known as lucid dreaming. A lucid dream is a state of consciousness where you become aware that you are dreaming while the dream is still happening, granting you the ability to explore, control, and manipulate the dream world with the same clarity you possess in waking life. Usually, realizing you are dreaming happens by chance in the middle of the night, but sleep paralysis offers a direct, albeit intense, shortcut to this state. Enthusiasts of consciousness exploration refer to this as the WILD technique, or wake-induced lucid dreaming. The objective of WILD is to keep the mind strictly alert while the body falls asleep, essentially riding the wave of paralysis directly into a dream without ever losing consciousness. For those who practice this technique, sleep paralysis is not a nightmare to be avoided, but a coveted state to be induced. They lay still, ignoring the itch to roll over, effectively tricking the brain into sending the signal to paralyze the muscles, waiting for that heavy blanket of atonia to fall so the magic can begin.
It begins with the physiological sensation of paralysis, which triggers a panic response in the amygdala, the brain's ancient alarm system. Because the brain is a narrative-making machine, it desperately seeks a reason for this sudden, intense fear. Finding no physical danger in the room, it reaches into the depths of the subconscious and projects an image that matches the intensity of the emotion. This is why the hallucinations are so often interpreted as intruders or menacing shadows. The image is not the cause of the fear, but the result of it. By recognizing this sequence, you can intervene and interrupt the loop. This approach aligns closely with the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, which teaches us that our thoughts create our feelings.
If the internal narrative is, "I am trapped and in danger," the resulting feeling is terror. However, if that thought is deliberately replaced with, "I am safe in my bed and my body is simply resting deeply," the feeling shifts toward calmness. It is a practice of mental alchemy, transmuting the heavy lead of fear into the gold of observation. When you greet the paralysis with curiosity rather than resistance, you deny the brain the raw material it needs to construct a nightmare. You might look at the hallucination and realize it is simply dream imagery that has failed to fully dissolve, like a digital overlay on the physical world. These visuals are just stray pixels of the imagination, harmless and fleeting. Some who have mastered this mindset report that they can actively change the nature of the hallucination by deliberately altering their emotional state. By projecting feelings of love, amusement, or boredom toward the shadowy figure, the figure often shrinks, fades, or transforms into something benign. It effectively turns a horror movie into a neutral documentary about your own neurology. Furthermore, we can reframe the physical sensation of the locked body itself. Instead of viewing the paralysis as a cage, you might choose to view it as a biological seatbelt. Your brain has engaged this mechanism to protect you, ensuring you do not flail or injure yourself while your mind wanders through the adventures of a dream. It is a sign of a healthy, functioning nervous system doing its best to keep you safe. Even the pressure often felt on the chest is not a crushing weight from above, but simply a shift in how you perceive your own automatic breathing when the voluntary muscles are powered down. This knowledge acts as a shield, lowering the threat value of the experience. It is remarkable how understanding the mechanics of the machinery can take the ghost out of the machine. I'm curious to know your perspective on this approach. Does learning the concrete science behind a specific fear usually help you feel more at ease? Or do you find that the primal emotional response tends to override the logic? By turning the unknown into the known, we strip the experience of its power to terrify, leaving behind only a quiet sense of wonder at the complexity of our own minds. This sense of wonder is perhaps never more potent when the experience shifts from seeing things in the room to feeling as though you were leaving the room entirely. Within the realm of sleep paralysis, a significant number of people report a sensation known as a vestibular motor hallucination, though you likely know it by its more common name, the out-of-body experience. It often begins with a distinct feeling of vibration or a high-frequency buzzing, followed by the unmistakable sensation of weightlessness. You might feel as though you are floating upward, hovering just inches above your mattress, or even turning fully around to look down at your own sleeping form. While this feels incredibly spiritual or supernatural to the person experiencing it, neurologists view it as a fascinating discrepancy in the brain's body mapping software. Your brain constantly maintains a map of where your body is in space, a sense called proprioception, which relies on a stream of data from your muscles, your eyes, and the delicate vestibular system in your inner ear. During the waking day, all these inputs agree with one another. Your eyes see the floor, your feet feel the pressure, and your inner ear confirms you are standing upright. However, during sleep paralysis, the inputs are severed or scrambled. Your body is in a state of atonia, deep paralysis, so your muscles provide no feedback. Your eyes might be partially open, but your vestibular system, which governs balance and spatial orientation, is still active in a state of REM dream logic. When you try to move during this state, your brain sends a command to your muscles, but the muscles do not respond. This creates a sensory conflict that the brain must resolve. It sent the command to move, but it received no confirmation of movement from the body.
To make sense of this confusion, the brain essentially guesses. It simulates the sensation of movement to match its intention. If you try to sit up, but your body remains flat, your brain constructs a phantom body that successfully sits up. You feel the motion of rising, the shift in gravity, and the change in perspective, even though your physical cells haven't budged an inch. Have you ever experienced that distinct sensation of flying or hovering just as you drifted off to sleep, or perhaps during a dream that felt incredibly real? This phenomenon has been traced to a specific region of the brain known as the temporoparietal junction. This is the area responsible for integrating sensory data to create your cohesive sense of self-location. When scientists have stimulated this region in patients with mild electric currents, the patients immediately reported the sensation of floating above their bodies or seeing themselves from a different corner of the room, proving that our feeling of being in our bodies is actually a complex construction of the mind, one that can be disrupted. Throughout history, before we understood the temporoparietal junction, these vivid sensations were the foundation of astral projection lore. Travelers spoke of the silver cord connecting their spirit to their physical form as they wandered the astral plane. It is beautiful to think that what was once interpreted as the soul wandering the cosmos is actually the brain's creative attempt to locate itself when the usual anchors of gravity and touch have been temporarily lifted away.
It suggests that our perception of reality is far more flexible than we assume, and that the feeling of freedom, of defying gravity, is hardwired into our neural pathways, waiting for a moment of silence to reveal itself. When we consider these strange, suspended moments from the perspective of deep time, the question naturally arises: why would nature allow such a thing to happen? In the harsh arithmetic of survival, being unable to move seems like a dangerous vulnerability. If a predator approached a sleeping ancestor on the savannah, paralysis would surely be a fatal flaw. Yet, evolutionary biologists suggest that this mechanism is actually a brilliant, albeit slightly imperfect, shield designed to protect us from ourselves. The necessity of this lock lies in the profound importance of REM sleep. This state is not merely rest, it is a period of intense neurological construction where the brain consolidates memories, processes complex emotions, and runs simulations of potential futures. To allow this internal theater to play out safely, the body must be strictly disconnected from the mind's commands. Without this muscle atonia, we would physically act out every chase, every flight, and every battle we experience in our dreams. For our primate ancestors, sleeping high in the canopy of ancient forests, thrashing about during a vivid dream would have resulted in a lethal fall. Thus, the paralysis is not a trap, but a biological safety harness, keeping the physical vessel still while the consciousness explores without boundaries. There is also a compelling concept known as the sentinel hypothesis, which offers a reason for the fear that often accompanies these episodes. It suggests that the phenomenon acts as a jagged edge of a mechanism meant to keep us safe. In the wild, total unawareness is a risk. Some researchers propose that the brain maintains a low-level alert system, scanning the environment for the snap of a twig or the rustle of leaves, even while we rest. When we wake up in sleep paralysis, this threat detection system is firing on all cylinders, but the body has not yet received the memo. Because you are helpless, the anxious brain attempts to explain this vulnerability by projecting a tangible threat into the room. It interprets the silence as ominous and the shadows as intruders, effectively hallucinating a predator to justify its own state of high alert. It is the mind trying to make sense of a physiological contradiction.
In this light, the shadowy figures are not supernatural visitations, but rather the misfiring of an ancient survival instinct, a relic of a time when we were prey. This condition is the cost of having a brain complex enough to dream vivid worlds while simultaneously keeping a watch on the real one. We are essentially operating a biological supercomputer that occasionally experiences a lag in synchronization between its hardware and software. The transition from the dream world to the waking world is usually seamless, like a dimmer switch raising the lights slowly. Sleep paralysis is simply what happens when that switch flickers, when the consciousness boots up mere seconds before the motor control system has finished its diagnostic checks. It serves as a humble reminder that our biology is not a polished, finished statue, but a living landscape of compromises where we trade the ability to move instantly for the safety of dreaming deeply. Understanding this mechanism transforms the experience from a source of terror into a moment of biological fascination, as we realize that the sensation of being held down is actually an act of profound protection. Your brain values your safety enough to keep you perfectly still while you adventure through the chaotic cosmos of your dreams. It is simply a matter of timing, a brief physiological hiccup where the chemical gates of the brainstem have not yet reopened, even though the lights in the command center have flickered on. This synchronization delay is arguably one of the most interesting quirks of human existence, proving just how complex the transition between our two worlds, waking and sleeping, truly is. We have traveled a long way together from the ancient interpretations of shadow people and heavy demons sitting upon the chest. We have moved from superstition to synaptic understanding, and in doing so, we strip the experience of its dread. While the hallucinations can feel vividly real, remember that they are merely the lingering projections of a mind that is still painting with the vibrant colors of the dream world, overlaying them onto the canvas of your bedroom ceiling. Knowing this removes the power of the fear, because you are safe. Your body is functioning exactly as it was designed to, prioritizing your physical safety above your immediate mobility. It is a temporary state, usually lasting only seconds, a fleeting pause before the machinery of movement hums back to life. It is deeply comforting to know that this is a shared human experience, a common thread that connects us across cultures, centuries, and continents. Whether you call it the old hag, kanashibari, or simply sleep paralysis, it is a testament to the intricate, fragile, and wonderful balancing act occurring within your skull every single night. You are never truly stuck. You are merely waiting for the system to buffer. The paralysis always breaks, the breath always deepens, and the fingers always regain their ability to drum against the sheets. As we conclude this exploration of the night's most mysterious phenomenon, I invite you to subscribe to this channel if you have found comfort in these relaxing facts, ensuring you can always return here for more calming science to aid your rest. Now, you can let go of any lingering tension. Your body is heavy, not because it is trapped, but because it is deeply relaxed. You are safe in your bed, warm under the covers, supported by the mattress, and watched over by a brain that knows exactly how to guide you into the restorative darkness. The mind can now follow the body's lead, drifting down, down into the quiet, motionless peace of true sleep.